You think physics was complete, not in every detail, but complete enough to be trusted. You imagine the laws of motion as solid, the speed of light as a limit, matter arranged in predictable ways. You see order, you see a universe almost mapped. You were taught that the early 20th century left only refinements to discover, that the greatest mysteries had been solved, that progress was linear, incremental, safe. This is wrong. The equations that seemed to govern reality were incomplete in a subtle way, not in their algebra, not in their derivations, but in what they did not demand. They were quiet about certain possibilities, and those possibilities were not trivial. You assume that gaps in physics are temporary, that they will close naturally, that one day someone will measure, observe, or calculate, and the universe will nod and remain consistent. You imagine the vacuum as empty, nothing there, a neutral backdrop, a passive stage for matter and energy. This is a convenient thought, a comforting thought. It is also false, because physics looked complete only when you ignored what it might force into existence. You interpreted absence as simplicity. You mistook silence for confirmation. You think experiments were the ultimate arbiter. You think what we can observe defines what is real. You assume that reality is polite, that it conforms to expectation. This is wrong. Physics did not wait for observation to demand its truths. It waited for consistency, and consistency can be merciless. It does not negotiate with intuition. It does not reassure the human mind. You imagine Dirac's equations as descriptions, as if he were labeling what already existed. You assume he revealed particles, energy states, antimatter, because someone noticed them first. This is wrong. What he wrote did not passively describe the universe. It forced it to behave in ways that were unimaginable. It defined reality more strictly than observation could justify it, compelled the existence of entities that should not have existed. It bent what you thought you knew about matter and vacuum. You were told physics progresses gradually, one discovery at a time. You were told that reality waits patiently for us to catch up. This is wrong. Physics never waited. It only pretended to pause while your intuition caught up. It only looked complete while certain possibilities were suppressed, ignored, or considered absurd. And when Dirac's equation arrived, those suppressed possibilities were no longer optional. They were required. You think you understand the universe because you know its rules. You think you're observing it as it is. You think there is a safe, finished structure beneath everything. This is wrong. Physics looked complete, but it was not. It was a fragile illusion. A veneer, one equation, carefully written, would quietly strip away that veneer. Not violently, not with spectacle, but with clarity. And what remained would not be familiar. What remained would not be safe. What remained would not be complete in the way you assumed it to be. You think this is subtle. You think it is abstract. You think it will not touch what you feel, you know. You're wrong. Completion was never real. It was never deserved. It was never meant to survive scrutiny. Physics looked complete, then Dirac wrote one equation, and it refused to let the illusion stand. You assume equations describe reality, that symbols trace what exists, that mathematics is passive, a map, not a mandate. This is wrong. You imagine formulas as mirrors, reflecting nature back at you, capturing only what already is, a faithful transcription, a polite observer. This is wrong. Mathematics does not wait to be confirmed. It does not answer to observation. It does not listen to intuition. It can demand. You were taught that reality decides what exists, that equations follow reluctantly, that nature sets the stage and math annotates. This is wrong. In Dirac's work, equations acted differently. They were not commentary. They were command. They declared what the universe must contain. And they did so silently, without apology. You think you know what is real because you see it. You assume what is unseen is absent. You imagine the vacuum as empty. You imagine energy as bounded. You imagine the universe will not invent what seems impossible. This is wrong. Mathematics can preempt observation. It can insist that reality produce the unobserved. It can construct what you thought could not exist. You believe consistency is harmless, that it merely prevents contradiction, that it is a guide, not a tyrant. This is wrong. Consistency is exacting. It permits nothing arbitrary. It demands that every possibility compatible with its rules be realized. It will not let intuition veto necessity. It will not let comfort restrain what must occur. You imagine equations as static. You imagine them as words describing a narrative already written. You imagine they only suggest, never dictate. This is wrong. Dirac's equation was not descriptive. It was prescriptive.
It told the universe, create the states you cannot see, obey the symmetry you cannot avoid, accommodate the negative, the mirrored, the forbidden. You think this is abstract, far from practical life. You think it affects only theorists and textbooks. You think observation is still supreme. This is wrong. Reality is not optional. It is not democratic. It does not permit you to ignore the rules it must obey. And mathematics, when properly formulated, imposes those rules first, before observation, before experiment, before human comprehension. You were comfortable assuming that the map of equations could never reach beyond what is obvious. You were comfortable believing that the unseeable was irrelevant. You were comfortable believing that reality is only what you perceive. This is wrong. Equations do not merely describe, they constrain, they mandate, they compel existence. And when Dirac wrote his equation, it did not reflect the world. It insisted on a world. It forced reality into forms your intuition would have rejected. It allowed negative energy states. It demanded antimatter. It tolerated symmetry that defied expectation. You imagine mathematics is inert and observation is sovereign. You imagine reality waits for your approval. This is wrong. Mathematics can stop describing and start enforcing. It can rearrange reality quietly, completely. And when it does, the universe no longer belongs to the observer. It belongs to the logic. It belongs to the equation. It belongs to necessity. You think this is distant, theoretical, abstract. You think the consequences are minor or safely contained. This is wrong. When mathematics stops describing, nothing is as it seems. Everything you assumed about existence, about what can appear, what can vanish, what is allowed, what is forbidden, becomes uncertain. Every intuition is fragile. Every perception is provisional. You were taught physics is about discovery, about adding new knowledge to old, about mapping the universe as it is. This is wrong. Sometimes, physics is about the universe refusing your assumptions, and mathematics is the messenger delivering that refusal.
You imagine consistency as benign. You think it only prevents contradictions. A guide, a quiet ruler, not a force, not a demand. This is wrong. Consistency is not polite. It does not negotiate with intuition. It does not allow exceptions for comfort. It does not pause while humans adjust their beliefs. You assume that if the universe seems contradictory, the fault lies in our measurements. You assume that intuition is the final filter. You assume mathematics is a language, not a law. This is wrong. Dirac did not seek to discover. He sought coherence. He demanded it. He wrote equations that obeyed symmetry, logic, and completeness, and ignored expectation, perception, and convention. You imagine symmetry as decorative, aesthetic, optional. You imagine mathematics as a set of suggestions open to interpretation. This is wrong. Symmetry is uncompromising. It does not tolerate omission. It does not forgive incomplete structures. It does not accept imagination as a substitute for enforcement. You believe negative energy is impossible. You believe antimatter is a fiction until observed. You believe the universe cannot contain what you cannot see. This is wrong. Consistency demanded these things. The equation required negative states. The equation required mirror matter. The equation required what you assumed could not exist. You think reality is reactive, that the universe conforms to observation, that the human mind can define the limits of possibility. This is wrong. The demand hidden inside consistency is absolute. It will not negotiate with your comfort. It will not pause for your intuition. It will impose the rules it contains. Even if the universe seems unaware, even if it seems absurd, you are taught mathematics describes the world. That reality chooses. That observation rules. This is wrong. Dirac's work shows that consistency is not descriptive, it is prescriptive. It defines what reality must be. It sets boundaries. Even when unseen, even when unimagined, you assume that a single equation can only do so much. You assume it maps, it annotates, it suggests. This is wrong. The equation dictated the existence of what had no precedent. The equation tolerated what had no analog. The equation compelled what intuition rejected. You imagine the universe is passive. That reality unfolds gently, that it can absorb ideas slowly, that certainty can persist. This is wrong. Consistency can topple your expectations, quietly, without warning, without spectacle. It does not ask permission. It does not explain. You think you're safe because mathematics is abstract. You think it cannot reach into reality itself. This is wrong. Consistency is not abstract. It is active. It governs. It imposes. It decides what must exist and what cannot be avoided. And when Dirac applied it rigorously, the universe produced what you believed impossible. It accepted what you assumed forbidden. It revealed cracks you did not see because consistency allowed no compromise. You think human logic can contain it. You think observation can limit it. You think experience can restrain it. This is wrong.
The demand hidden inside consistency is relentless. It silently rewrites the permissible. It quietly orders the impossible. It enforces what you assumed could never be. You think physics is a dialogue, that reality waits for consent, that mathematics only follows. This is wrong. Consistency is a quiet tyrant, and in Dirac's hands it became unavoidable.
You imagine reality as limited, bounded by what is familiar, constrained by observation, defined by what you can see, touch, or measure. This is wrong. The universe does not yield to expectation. It does not honor intuition. It does not stop because something seems impossible. You assume particles obey your rules, that energy behaves within your comfort, that symmetry is decorative, that negative states mirror matter, antimatter. These are curiosities, not necessities. This is wrong. Dirac's equation demanded entities that had no precedent. It insisted on particles that should not exist. It required energy states that you would discard as absurd. It tolerated matter that mirrored the familiar, yet obeyed no human logic. You imagine empty space as nothing, a passive void, a neutral stage, a backdrop. This is wrong. The vacuum is a construct, it is not empty. It contains constraints you cannot perceive. It enforces possibilities that are unimaginable. You believe the universe only contains what is observed. You believe reality adapts to measurement. You believe the unseen is irrelevant. This is wrong. What you do not see is still demanded. What you do not imagine still exists because mathematics insists it must. You assume nature is kind. That improbability limits existence. That absence is proof of impossibility. This is wrong. When Dirac applied symmetry and consistency, reality complied, not as a suggestion, not as an approximation, but as a requirement. Antimatter appeared, negative energy states appeared, a mirrored universe appeared silently, enforced by the logic of the equation alone. You think these are abstract constructs, ideas waiting for observation to confirm them. This is wrong. They existed before observation. They existed because the rules dictated it. Your senses, your intuition, your measurements, these arrived later, after necessity had already acted. You assume the universe is familiar, safe, predictable. This is wrong. Reality is indifferent. It is more exacting than intuition allows. It is more comprehensive than observation reveals. It contains what you would not tolerate, what you would discard as fiction, because mathematics has no preference. You imagine physics can absorb anomalies gradually, that disruptive entities can be explained, contained, or neutralized. This is wrong. The equation allowed what your mind rejects. It forced existence into patterns that defy expectation. It produced a universe that is stranger than observation alone can reveal. You assume impossibility is impossible. You assume absence is absence. This is wrong. The reality Dirac exposed is not optional. It is silent, invisible, unavoidable. It obeys no comfort. It obeys no preference. It obeys the logic that wrote it into existence. You imagine mathematics as a servant of reality. This is wrong. Sometimes mathematics dictates reality, and when it does, reality becomes what should not exist, and you are forced to accept it. You assume that after disruption things settle, that once a problem is identified, it is resolved, that physics absorbs shocks and returns to balance. That instability is temporary. This is wrong. What Dirac's work did was not absorbed. It did not integrate cleanly. It did not restore confidence. It changed what stability means. Before, physics imagined the universe as sealed, defined by boundaries, governed by laws that behaved. Even when incomplete, they were trusted. They could be extended without being questioned. After Dirac, that trust dissolved quietly. Nothing dramatic happened. No collapse. No singular moment of failure. Just a realization that certainty itself had been a convenience. You assumed that once antimatter was discovered, the problem ended, that experiments confirmed the prediction and physics moved on, that this closed the loop. This is wrong. Discovery did not repair the damage. It confirmed it, because the problem was never the existence of antimatter. The problem was why it had to exist at all, why mathematics could demand reality, produce something so foreign, and do so without reference to observation, usefulness, or intuition. Once that door opened, it could not be closed. You imagined the vacuum as a return to nothing, a safe baseline, a ground state where complications disappear. This is wrong after Dirac. Nothing could no longer be trusted. The vacuum stopped being empty. It stopped being passive. It became unstable by definition. Not because of particles you could see, but because of states that had to be accounted for, because absence itself became structured, because nothing was now constrained by rules you could not ignore.
You assumed that physics regained control through refinement, through better theories, through deeper understanding. This is wrong. Control was never regained, only replaced with precision. Precision does not restore comfort, it removes ambiguity while preserving unease. The universe after Dirac was no longer a system you could complete. It became something you could only constrain, something you could describe locally, while knowing that global certainty was gone. You think this is a technical issue, a problem for specialists, a concern confined to equations. This is wrong. The idea of a finished universe quietly died here, not because too much was unknown, but because too much was required. Reality was no longer free to be simple, it was obligated to be consistent. And consistency does not promise simplicity. You assume physics still aims toward closure. A final theory, a complete description. This is wrong. After the break, physics became something else. A discipline that advances while doubting its own foundations. A structure built with the knowledge that its ground is conditional, that its rules may demand consequences no one expects. You think this uncertainty is temporary, that one day it will resolve. This is wrong. The uncertainty is structural. It is built into the way equations relate to reality. It is not a gap to be filled. It is a condition to be endured. Dirac did not introduce chaos. He introduced inevitability. The inevitability that mathematics may know more about reality than observation ever will, and that what it knows may not be acceptable. After the break, physics no longer promised safety. It no longer implied that intuition could catch up. It no longer suggested that understanding leads to peace. It only promised coherence, and coherence can coexist with discomfort. You assume that science progresses toward reassurance. This is wrong. Sometimes it progresses toward quiet unease, toward a universe that works, but does not explain itself in human terms, toward laws that hold even when they undermine the mental pictures you rely on. After Dirac, the universe did not become stranger. It became honest, and that honesty came at a cost. The cost was the idea that reality could ever feel complete again.